In the current segment of 20 minutes, we are discussing the drivers of entrepreneurship in the current climate and the key underpinnings for entrepreneurial resourcing. The learning outcomes of this segment are the key drivers of entrepreneurship in the age of COVID-19, digitization, climate change, and globalization versus protectionism, and to understand entrepreneurial resourcing in context of theory and existing practices. The very well-researched drivers of entrepreneurship include formal institutions, macroeconomic environment, technological factors, government programs, industry that you are in, financial environment, as well as the informal environment or cultural environment. So a favorable formal institutional framework would include an economy where general as well as intellectual property rights are protected, where investors and minority shareholders are protected, where you can start a business with low cost and less time and quite few procedures and so on. Then you have a macro economy. A favorable economy for entrepreneurship would be the one where there is a favorable taxation regime, and you have low cost of capital and very low inflation rate. If you look at also the macroeconomic environment would be the one where the economy size is big and the economic growth is high. Technological environment would be favorable if you have more R&D expenditure from the government as well as from businesses, and more patents created and registered and exploited by businesses. So that happens when you have a vibrant higher education system where industry, university, and government institutions work together to generate knowledge and to exploit that knowledge for innovation. Then you have government programs. The government programs are also helpful. For example, in UK, the Global Entrepreneur Program, and in the US, historically they had SBIR programs and the SBICs. The people who would register, under the SBA department. Also, the industry matters a lot because the industry life cycle, whether you are in the declining stage, maturity stage, whether there is demand for the product or not, and whether this industry is capital intensive or not. So these things also matter for entrepreneurial development. Then the financial environment is also very important because if you have a vibrant stock market, then the entrepreneurs have the incentive to list their companies once their businesses are established. And also sound financial system where you have banks and other financial institutions giving credit to entrepreneurs that meets their financial needs. Also, the venture capital firms and business angel, they give equity finance to entrepreneurs. So if you have good number of business angels and venture capital firms, then it is good for entrepreneurship. And last, part of that is also crowdfunding platform these days. If you have a good idea, you should post your idea on the crowdfunding platforms. And if people like it, then they will buy units in your business as like a shareholders. So the last one is the cultural environment, that is informal institutions. So, for example, compared to collectivist societies, the individualistic society, an individual is free to take his decisions, whether to start a business or not, whether to borrow money or to use own money. So they have this freedom. But in collectivist societies, individuals are usually dependent upon families and relatives, which is not good for entrepreneurship. So the drivers of entrepreneurship in current climate, we discussed digitization of economies, COVID-19, globalization versus protectionism, and the climate change. So digitization, yes, it is very powerful factor that is shaping the landscape of different businesses. Look, for example, the uh, the financial environment. The financial landscape is totally changed due to the digitalization. Look, for example, at the financial technologies, particularly the cryptocurrency that is challenging the old and established currencies. Similarly, fintechs are challenging the incumbents, particularly banks, and they have been threatened. And now the research shows and different articles show that now banks are partnering with the fintechs. Similarly, you can see the education technologies that is revolutionizing the education. So it has brought so many different opportunities for entrepreneurs to start business in any of the fields like social media, entertainment industry, e-commerce, advertising, and so forth. Then you have the climate change that is affecting the landscape of entrepreneurship. Like 20 years back, we had this climate changes discussions that were laden by the crisis. But the narrative is being is changing. These days, the climate discussions are uh, you know uh, in context of entrepreneurial opportunities, that how the crisis can be converted into opportunities. And quite many entrepreneurs have been successful in converting those crises into entrepreneurial opportunities through innovative solutions. I have a quotation from one of the Kenyan interviewee in one of the study conducted in 2020, and he says that I found waste products. People could call it waste, but on my side, if I use this waste, I can make money. And this is happening everywhere in the world. So it has created opportunities. There's pressure from governments and the local governments, and also environmental critiques, that businesses are changing their approach, and they are changing the way of thinking, and they're coming up with solutions to environmental challenges. You can see back in 2000 and now in 2020, in this last 20 years, the number of startups focusing on sustainability have increased 6 times. This shows that it offers a lot of entrepreneurship opportunities. Then you can see the COVID-19, how it has shaped almost every aspect of life. And one study conducted in Pakistan by Nasser and his colleagues in 2021 shows that the COVID-19, due to COVID-19, entrepreneurs have experienced fragile financial uh, ability, and they're unable to release supplier payments, and they're facing low demand from customer. That's why they're thinking whether to continue their business and to invest into their business anymore or not. So you have seen that in the last 2 months, due to COVID-19, lockdown restrictions lifted, and the economy is opened up, that caused the sudden increase in demand of products from China and other countries, and that resulted in supply chain disruptions and oil prices. So it has posed many challenges for entrepreneurs as well as other sectors. But it has also offered some opportunities to industries like ICT and health industries. So you see that there are a lot of educational technologies promoted during COVID-19, and also you can see this financial technologies and so many other things that uh, got promotion during this COVID-19 because people were interacting through virtual platforms. Then you have the protectionism versus globalization, and it is affecting entrepreneurship. So some people think that protectionism is good for local entrepreneurs, whereas others think that globalization is good for economies overall, because the globalization results in exchange of ideas between economies. But this study by Bove and his colleagues 2021, they are very clear in their agenda. And they says that that's not very simple to say that either protectionism or globalization are good for entrepreneurship. But in fact, this relationship is dependent upon the absorptive capacity of the economies. If the absorptive capacity of an economy is high, which means that the businesses have the potential to absorb and to imitate and copy external knowledge and innovations from the multinational corporations, which means that high absorptive capacity. If this is the case, then tariffs are bad for that economy, to impose tariffs on multinational corporations. Because if you impose tariff on them, then what will happen is that you discourage, you cut their profits, so they will not leave that economy because of strategic reasons, but they will come up with more and more innovations and quick implementations. And in the result of that, local entrepreneurs will be even more quick to copy that. And consequently, the replicating entrepreneurs will emerge, so which is not good for high absorptive capacity economies. In fact, subsidies are good for them. And they suggest that for the low absorptive capacity economies, both tariff and subsidies are good. You can study this paper. It's a very interesting study. So in the next slides, we are discussing entrepreneurial resourcing. When we discuss entrepreneurial resourcing, it's always good to explain it using the resource-based view, which considers firms as bundles of resources. And it argues that firms that have more resources, more valuable resources, are more in a position to survive and perform compared to other firms. So we are going to discuss different resources, particularly financial resources, physical resources, human capital, network, and social capital. So financial resources, you have savings that you take a start with while starting a business. Then you can arrange finances from your family and friends. There are certain government programs that give grants and subsidies. Also, there is a concept bootstrapping, and it is being researched. I'm going to explain it in the next slide. So it is also a very valuable resource. And bank loans, you can take bank credit, business angels and venture capital and crowdfunding platforms discussed in earlier slides. These are also financial resources that you can utilize while starting a business. And then you have the stock options. So what is bootstrapping? Bootstrapping means that raising finance without using banks or equity or hard cash, and gaining resources without the need for finance. So you can see on the right side, the typical activities include discount on payments, advance payments, speeding up invoices, select customers who pay on time, negotiate with payment conditions, delay payments, barter for goods and services. And at the end, you can see share equipment with other firms, share premises with employees, temporary employees, borrow equipment from other firms. So probably you got the sense from these activities what does bootstrapping means. And in the next slide, it explains it more, which is the concept of entrepreneurial bricolage, which is also part of the bootstrapping. An important concept in that is making do, which means creating something from nothing, designing new services through discarded, disused, or local resources that other fails to recognize. So if you think about your own surroundings, you may have certain resources that you can utilize them for your own business. For example, in this study by Yashin and Leonidas 2020, an owner manager of a B&B operates a summer cafe catering mainly to locals for and running that cafe for not for profit, um, just to maintain and establish relationship with the local communities. Some have employed pensioners as low-cost employees. They use local products such as food and drinks and no-cost material in order to develop a relationship with the local communities. Um, Local resource also includes, knowledge and stories about the sites and buildings and scenes as a marketing tool, and about the local wildlife. So these kind of things called bricolage and bootstrapping. If you look at this uh, chart, you can see on the left side is seed, then startup, then early stage, and then established, which shows that in the initial stage of your business, you can only use personal finance, family and friends, and bootstrapping, because at that time, the information asymmetry about your business is very high, and nobody is going to trust you like venture capital, commercial banks. So the risk of adverse selection and moral hazard is very high. Then when your business is in the early growth stage, then you have chances to attract commercial loans and venture capital funds or business angels. And eventually when you have established business, then you can list your business through an IPO. You also have the physical resources. By physical resources as a resource, I mean, like IT infrastructure, logistic infrastructure, own stores, plant and machinery, premises. And it really depends upon the business model, the nature of the business. For example, if you look at the Tesco, they have logistic infrastructure, network of stores. If you look at Amazon, they have logistic infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and warehouse. So, well, in some other businesses, like maybe an IT company, they do not need capital intensive resources, but they may need intellectual and human capital more than the physical resources. Then there is a human capital, which consists of generic human capital and specific human capital. Generic one consists of education, knowledge, and skills, whereas specific human capital consists of on-the-job training and experience. The second one, it gets accumulated with time, because the more you do job or do business, the more you get the experience and the skills through that experience, and that really gives you a competitive advantage. So this is something that makes you dynamic, and in any form, the context, the specific human capital is basically context specific, because all the human capital working with you have very unique knowledge about your business, and that's why that is hard to be imitated by any other form. Next is the network and social capital. Network means that you have personal and professional networks with people around you. Strong ties is part of the social network theory, which means that relationship with friends and family, whereas weak ties is the professional and business context. In the next slide, I'm going to explain how the social networks can be converted into social skills through socialization process, where you can express yourself and you can promote yourself, and this eventually leads to social capital, means trust, cooperation, fairness, and reciprocity. And then eventually it will enable you to attract financial resources, labor, knowledge, and emotional support. There are also other resources like intellectual capital, reputation, and organizational capital, but most of them depend upon the human capital and networks. I'm going to give you finally an activity for 3 minutes. think about the resources that you have in your surroundings, write them in bullet points up to 5, and then we will discuss after this activity how you can think about starting your own business and arranging those resources for your business, including financial, human, or any other form of resources. Thank you very much.